Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here, bringing you all one last Market Watch episode before Christmas. So we were actually going to continue with some of the sort of like year-end stuff, but with the sudden announcement of changes to the Master Rule, we've seen a ton of crazy reactions by the market, and I wanted to make sure that you guys are as up-to-date as possible. So the new Master Rule basically allows fusions, synchros, and exies to go back to Master Rule 3 and be summoned to the main monster zones without needing those zones to be opened up by link arrows, which opens up the way for a ton of decks that were previously hit under Master Rule 4. Now, at the same time, we've also gotten quite a few new cards come announced in the OCG, which has caused effects in the TCG market for when those cards are eventually imported over. So really important here, guys, this is not a video where we're going to discuss what cards are good or not under the new Master Rule. I'm not saying any of the cards in this video will suddenly become viable. That sort of discussion is something that we're going to cover in a different video. Rather, this video is strictly for purposes of addressing the reactions to the news by the market so that you guys are aware of price shifts that have already taken place. Let's get started. Okay, so first up here, we have Tamiya Sulkin. So this is a really cool synchro monster. It's kind of reminds me of Aggerpain in that it lets you bring out something like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon or Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend out of the extra deck basically for free. Now it is a little bit more difficult to summon than Aggerpain was. It does require a non-tuner and a tuner, both of which are the same level and level 5 or higher. So this isn't something that's going to be made in like every single deck. One thing that I did see, I think over on like Lithium's channel, is Heroes playing this, where they use Destiny Hero Malicious, and then they bring out TG Striker under a Sold, synchro that off into Coral Dragon, and then they can make Tamiya Sulkin from there. Could be interesting. I know Tamiya Sulkin was really popular before, and we now have Sea Monster of Theseus as an instant fusion target, so it definitely could see play there. So Tamiya Sulkin is only available in two different prints. It's either the Shonen Jump Ultra Rare, which is the original copy, or as a super rare from either the Clash of Rebellion or Dimension of Chaos Special Edition, depending on whether you got the product in North America or in Europe. We're looking currently at $25 for the original Ultra Rare version and $8 for the super rare version. The Ultra Rare was actually like $40 for a little while when the news first was announced, because people were just like so hyped about it and they thought this card was really going to be good. I don't think that this card is going to be as strong as what people are expecting. I think it's a little bit more difficult to make, so it's not like it's something that everyone's going to need to have access to. That being said, I would be selling the ultra rares at the $25 price point. If you can pick them up for like between 10 and 15, I think it's a pretty decent hold, because as a Shonen Jump limited edition ultra rare print, it's still going to retain some value, but at $25, it's a definite sell for me. The super rare, if you can pick them up, I think that between like $3 to $5 is a relatively fair price for you to pay for them, especially if you want to play it and just have your copy just in case the card does become really good. If you do have extra copies, I would definitely be selling them at $8, because I think there's a very good chance that we could see the card reprinted in something like Dual Overload as soon as the new Master Rule comes into effect. Next up is Bahamut Shark, which is kind of similar to Tamiya Sulkin in that it's an extra deck monster that brings another extra deck monster out for free, which is really great, especially under the new Master Rule. In this case, you're probably bringing out something like Totally Awesome, which is a really good negate. This is something that can be done in decks like Mermail, which can use Atlantean Dragoons and then instant fusion out rare fish to make this card pretty easily, as well as get a search off of Dragoons. Now, as a result, we've seen both copies of this card get bought a lot over the weekend, and we're now looking at $22 for a single secret rare copy and a whopping $12 just for a gold rare, which is really crazy in my opinion. Now, I think that this is another card that I would be selling into the hype for, because I don't think it's as strong of a card as it was before. Mermail aren't really a relevant deck and haven't been for a number of years, and I don't think that anything else can really make and abuse this card right now. I mean, you could in Heroes make it, but you'd have to play something like Tin Goldfish to make it consistently, which is pretty outdated and doesn't really like mesh with the rest of the hero cards at this point. And we don't have Norden anymore, which would have been able to make this card all by itself, but it's banned. So if you can find someone who is willing to buy into the hype around this card, grab the card and flip it to them. Otherwise, I'd avoid holding onto this card for too long and would much rather just wait a couple of months for the hype to die down before looking to pick this card up. Alright, next we have Dimensional Barrier, a card that used to be like one of the most sought after cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But now a lot of people really haven't thought about it at all. In fact, the card has basically been completely irrelevant ever since the release of Lynx. So this is a trap card that allows you to call either Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Pendulum, negate the effects of all of that type of monster on the field for one turn, and then prevent both players from summoning that type of monsters as well. So with the announcement of changes to the Master Rule, people have been sort of hyping up Dimensional Barrier as a side deck card, as if you flip it against a deck that relies on one sort of specific summoning mechanic, you can essentially stop that deck for a whole turn. Now fortunately, we've only really seen buyouts of the original Invasion Vengeance Secret Rare copy, where we're looking at around $10 a piece. There are a few other versions, including a Secret Rare Megaton reprint, a Structure Deck Common reprint, and then a very recent Dual Devastator Ultra Rare print. Most likely, you already have your copies already, but if not, you can still grab like the Commons or Ultras for quite cheap, probably only like $1 or so a piece at most. Personally, I'm holding on to a few sets of the Ultra Rares just because of how cheap they are, and then moving the rest of the Secret Rare copies while the card is still hyped, just in case the card fails to take off in the future. So DDDs are a deck that never really had a chance to shine at all in the TCG. They came into the game way too late, as we didn't get the structure deck here until Zodiac format, at which point the deck was just far too heavily outclassed, and then the deck suffered a lot more with the release of Master Rule 4, as it lacks the resources to set up enough link arrows to still make big boards. Now, however, people are finally excited about DDD having the chance to shine in the TCG. Most cards from the archetype now are available as commons from the structure deck and whatnot. However, even though Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok was also available as a common a couple of times, it is currently the OTS Tournament Pack super rare version of this card that's being hyped up as one of the harder to find max rarity cards in the archetype. Now, it's a very important extender in the deck as well, summoning any DDD monster from your graveyard when it itself is special summoned. Now, as with most things, we should definitely be trying to sell this card into the hype, as it's impossible to tell right now if DDDs are going to really be a good deck. Personally, I'm leaning towards no, because I feel like the deck is still pretty vulnerable to important cards like Nibiru. At any rate, there are common and rare versions of this card available as well. So if you really want to play the deck, I would play the lower rarity versions, where you can get a set of this card for like $1 and then sell the super rare copies while they're hyped. Alright, so I swear, if Madolche Madeline doesn't get reprinted in 2020, my brain is going to implode. The number of times that we've seen buyouts of Madolche Madeline is honestly just ridiculous, and I don't understand why it hasn't been reprinted yet. So the card hasn't been reprinted in literally 5 years, as it is currently only available with its original super rare printing from Return of the Duelist. This is back when spellbooks first came out. A lot of people are actually currently speculating that Madolche is going to be a much better deck under the new Master Rule changes, as the deck doesn't have to go into that extra step of making the link 2. Personally, I think the deck is pretty scary going second, but if the deck goes first, it doesn't really do a whole lot, and it's kind of whatever. But yeah, if you guys had the foresight to see this price jump coming, then good for you. The card is currently like $50 lowest on TCG Player. If you have this card, I mean, like, you're probably someone who just likes the deck and wants to keep it, so that's fine, just go ahead and keep it, because at this rate we're going, we probably aren't going to see the card reprinted until sometime in like 2025. So unrelated to the Master Rule changes, Scrap Orthros is currently a pretty pricey card. Johnny Nguyen actually played Scraps, making a top 8 at the Fayetteville Regionals, which is really impressive. As a result though, we've seen Scrap Orthros shoot up in price, as it is an extender for the deck that Johnny played 2 copies of. This card is only available as a secret rare in Extreme Victory at the moment and has never been reprinted, so we're currently looking at $18 lowest for a single copy on TCG Player. Naturally, a lot of people have wanted to try and pick up the deck to play with it, though they're definitely unlikely to see a similar level of success with the deck. It is important to note that the deck that topped did play both Danger and Sky Striker engines, so we have to ask ourselves, did the deck do well because Scraps themselves are really good, or was it just like those 2 other really strong engines being mixed with Scraps, piloted by a really good player, that allowed the deck to be successful? Personally, I'm leaning towards the latter. I don't really think that Scraps are necessarily that strong on their own, as much as Scrap Wyvern is like a really good new card for them. I could definitely see this card being reprinted as like an OTS pack common in the relatively near future, and I would expect the hype around this card to die off pretty quickly. So if you are holding onto copies of this card and don't intend to use them, I would personally be moving them off as soon as possible. Next up, in the set Eternity Code, the OCG has just announced a new invoked monster, which is pretty good. It allows you to pop an opponent's monster when it's special summoned, as well as when your opponent special summons a monster once per turn, which is pretty cool. Now, at the same time, the invoked archetype gets a pretty decent buff with the new master rule changes, as you don't need to set up link arrows to go into multiple invoked fusion monsters. The deck can now do some pretty cool things, even having access to something like True King of All Calamities with World Legacy Monstrosity. Anyways, the invoked card that I've noticed trending upwards and want to keep an eye on is Invoked Raijin, the Wind Invoked Fusion. So this, along with Invocation, are really important cards to take note of on the market, but the reason I'm looking at Raijin is because it's only had one printing ever. We're currently looking at a market price of about $8, but with very, very limited quantities available on the market. Now, if Invoked is something you're looking to play in the next couple of months, Raijin is definitely something I'd be looking to grab pretty soon. Now, we are kind of due for a reprint, as we've already seen reprints to cards like Invocation and Mechaba, but I feel like it's a card that can be very easy to overlook and won't be reprinted for at least several months. So there's a lot of room for it to increase in price over the next while before we ever do see a reprint, and therefore I would definitely recommend getting your copies for between $5 to $7 now while you still can. Alright guys, the last card we're going to cover here is Deep Sea Diva. So there is a new archetype coming soon to the OCG called the Deep Sea archetype, which revolves around using information about the cards in your opponent's hand. We have therefore seen some of the higher rarity versions of Deep Sea Diva bought out, as people expect it to be used as a combo starter in that new deck. We're currently looking at around $40 for a single Turbo Pack super rare copy, and even $4 for the ultra rare copies from Duelist Saga. Now, I don't know if the archetype is really going to be any good, though I do think that the ability to look at your opponent's hand all the time is really cool. What I do know, however, is that the card just went from limited to semi-limited in the OCG, likely as a way to help generate interest in the new archetype, and I would definitely expect a similar thing to happen in the TCG at some point. Now, this does kind of worry me, because that's kind of like a really big boost to Mermail being able to pull Neptibus out of the deck so consistently, but who knows, maybe they'll address that in another way. Either way, I would expect to see Diva coming off the list sometime soon, which would definitely result in Deep Sea Diva spiking in price yet again. So regardless of whether or not the archetype is actually good, I think that the card is still going to see even more hype. Personally, I have a set of the Duelist Saga Ultra Rares. I think that rarity is really underrated, and I don't think it's worth it for me to be sitting on $120 in a set of Turbo Pack Deep Sea Divas, so I would definitely be moving them. Also, remember that you should still be able to grab sets of the commons or rare versions for virtually next to nothing as well. Alright everyone, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch it. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. I know that the new master rule changes are really crazy. I'm personally super excited for them. I think they're going to receive a lot of positive attention and revive a lot of interest in the game as well. So yeah, I have a bit of time off over the next week or so, but I will not be spending too much time on Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. I'll be doing some family things, as I would expect all of you guys to be doing as well. Anyways guys, I hope you all have a good Christmas and happy holidays. As always, please make sure you slam that thumbs up button and comment down below what other changes are happening with the market that maybe I haven't had the opportunity to mention in this video. And of course, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already to myself and Tombox for all of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh content. And yeah, until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.